In a town nestled between two mountains, there was a wealthy merchant named Ladi who was known for his ambition and his quick rise to fortune. People admired him, but they also feared him, for he was a shrewd man who boasted of his success and looked down on anyone he deemed foolish or beneath him. One day a wandering sage passed through the town. He was an old man with ragged clothes, carrying nothing but a walking stick and a small satchel of herbs. Although his appearance was humble, his wisdom was renowned, and people often traveled from faraway villages just to seek his advice. The sage arrived in the marketplace, where Lady was holding court, boasting loudly about his recent business success. Seeing the sage, Lady thought he would make a show of his intelligence and impress the crowd by challenging the old man. "Old man," Lady called, smirking, "you are said to be wise, but let me ask you this. What makes a man a fool?" The sage looked at him calmly and replied, "A fool is often someone who does not know his own limits or the limits of others. He's someone who puts pride above humility and forgets to listen." Lady laughed. "I disagree. A fool is simply someone who is less successful, less clever, or poorer than those who have climbed to the top like me. Why don't we make a wager to prove who the greatest fool is?" The sage raised his eyebrows, curious. "What kind of wager?" "Let's see who can make the bigger fool of himself," Lady proposed, thinking he had nothing to lose. "We'll each set out into the world, and after a year we'll meet here again. Whoever has managed to make a greater fool of himself will admit defeat." The sage agreed, and they shook hands. Lady walked away, chuckling to himself, sure he could never be outdone. He began his journey the very next day, determined to prove that he could win by any means necessary. During his travels, Lady would purposely engage in ridiculous acts in public to appear foolish, all while carefully saving face whenever he could. He would stand on street corners reciting nonsense, or stumble dramatically in the village squares, hoping word would reach the old sage. He felt confident he would win his bet, for no one could ever actually see him as foolish. He was a wealthy man after all. Meanwhile, the sage wandered from village to village, sharing his wisdom and helping the sick with his herbs. He lived simply, never pretending to be more than he was, but always listening and learning from everyone he met. As he went, people began to tell him stories of a rich merchant who was acting strangely, seemingly in an effort to prove something to someone. Finally, after a year had passed, both men returned to the town square to meet, and a curious crowd gathered to see the outcome of the wager. Lady strutted forward, his chin held high, ready to claim victory. "Well, old man," he said smugly, "I've done things you wouldn't believe. I made a complete fool of myself in 3 cities, and everyone in the marketplace knows it. I think we can all agree that I've won." The sage smiled gently and turned to the crowd. "Tell me, townspeople, who do you believe is the greater fool here?" One man spoke up. "We have heard of Lady's antics, yes, but no one thinks he's a fool. They simply see him as a rich man doing odd things for attention." The crowd murmured in agreement, but then an elderly woman stepped forward. "The true fool," she said softly, "is the one who does not recognize wisdom when it stands before him. The sage has spent his time helping others, listening and learning, while Lottie spent his time pretending to be foolish, thinking that would prove something to us." Another man added, "Lady thought wealth made him wise, but his pride has clouded his judgment." The crowd began to murmur, realizing that the sage had proven himself not only as wise but as humble, while Lady's attempts to appear foolish only highlighted his arrogance. The sage then spoke. In seeking to make a fool of himself, Lady revealed the greatest foolishness of all, the belief that pride and riches could mask the truth of who he is. True wisdom lies in humility, not in trying to prove one's worth to others. Lady, realizing his mistake, lowered his head embarrassed. He had sought to outsmart the sage, only to become a lesson in foolishness himself. From that day forward, he tried to live with more humility, never again attempting to show off his wealth or success. And the sage? He continued his travels, leaving behind a legacy of wisdom, teaching everyone that the greatest fool of all is the one who forgets the value of humility and the strength of a quiet, listening heart.